The crisis at the border and the drug overdose epidemic are sure to be key issues in the race for the White House in 2024. The latest candidate to throw his hat into the ring is former governor of Arkansas, Asa Hutchinson. In his announcement this week, the veteran politician pointed to his long record in public service. He says he's been tested and has the determination that's needed for the executive office.
I stand alone in terms of my experience, my record, and leadership. From Congress to the DEA to Homeland Security, I have served our country in times of crisis.
Hutchinson is the sixth GOP candidate to enter the race so far, and that list will undoubtedly keep growing. And joining us now to talk about his run for the White House is the candidate himself, former Governor Asa Hutchinson. Governor, good to have you. I spoke to Ron Vitello about the crisis in the border and had our report from Washington on that. I'd like you to weigh in. If you were in the White House right now as the expiration of Title 42 looms, what would you do if you were president?
Well, first of all, the items that the Biden administration are trying to do now are about 2 years too late, and it sent the wrong signal. Ron did a nice job of talking about the pipeline and the concern about the pipeline. We've got to send a message that stop filling that pipeline and discouraging people from coming here for economic reasons. And so what I would do, and we've laid out a very specific plan, is you do have to put more resources there to support the Border Patrol. You also have to reform the asylum laws that have too many loopholes right now. You've got to process them quickly, and then you've got to go after the cartels. The administration talks about, in its vague terms, we don't know how this is going to happen, but utilization of the military. The governors have been sending National Guard resources from our states at our own expenses down to the border for some time because this administration wouldn't do it. And so obviously we want to be able to utilize more resources. It needs to be very visible, and the visibility of our commitment to securing the border will discourage people from getting in that pipeline. Then you got to put economic pressure on Mexico to cooperate with us in going after the cartels. It can be done. I did that as head of the DEA, and it's important that you target those cartels. They should be considered national terrorist organizations, and that should be part of our agenda and what we're doing.
How do you do that, though, Governor, when you have the president of Mexico saying, we don't make fentanyl here, and it's all it's the social decay in the United States that is the problem here. If all of you Americans didn't want to do drugs, there wouldn't be a drug problem. How do you deal with a president like that?
Well, that's the same argument that President Vicente Fox made to me. And obviously, we have a demand issue in the United States that needs to be addressed with preventive measures, just like I went to the fentanyl town hall held by Governor Reynolds in Iowa. So there's things we need to do, but that does not stop the pressure that we can put on Mexico and get their cooperation. And the pressure is economic. Right now, there's an opportunity for jobs offshore, manufacturing away in places like China can come back to Central and Mexico and South America, and we can block that, we can discourage that if they do not cooperate with us on establish a rule of law. Why should an industry go to Mexico if they don't have confidence that they're not going to be hit by the cartel? That's what we can do and should do.
In your announcement speech, you talked a lot about the economy. Inflation is cooling, according to the numbers we got out yesterday and today, but not fast enough. And of course, there's the looming threat of default by the U.S., which would be historic and catastrophic. Republicans in the House just passed a bill that has no chance of going any further. What do you think of Biden's demands that the debt ceiling must be raised separate from any budget negotiations?
Well, I disagree with that. I mean, anytime you're talking about raising the debt on the next generation, once again, you should be able to present the American public a framework as to how we're going to close the gap on that and reduce the deficit. I did spend a lot of time on the economy because it's a serious issue and it matters to our families, from the interest rates that are going up because of inflation and trying to control that. It all starts with excessive federal spending. I made announcements as to how to address that economic challenge that we have. It starts with controlling federal spending. Right. I said we need to reduce federal civilian employment by 10%. That's a start for it. We need to continue down that path.
Right, but you know the debt ceiling's about money we've already spent. I think he's not saying no negotiation. He's just saying the two shouldn't be linked.
Well, sure.
You don't want the United States to default, right? I mean, nobody wants that.
We're not going to default. We're not going to default. It should not default. Absolutely, that's important. But why would the president not want to say, okay, we're obviously going to extend the debt, but I've agreed with Congress as to how we're going to control spending in the future? That's not necessarily leakage. That is common sense of something that the American public expects. Governors balance the budget every year.
Every year.
I've done that. We need to do it again.
All right. Maybe it takes a governor's experience with those annual budget balancing acts. Governor Asa Hutchinson, thanks so much for joining us tonight. I hope you'll be back.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
All right, coming up too.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.